On today's Locked On Texan podcast, Miles Smith, son of head coach Lovie Smith, speaks about the linebacker play, and I think that's very interesting. So we're not going to get into the YouTube comments. However, we will be joined by Brandon K. Scott.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to a Friday episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online is where the game starts. And with the Locked On Texans is where this Good Friday starts off. I'm John Hickman, of course, joined by none other than Cody Davis. We will be joined by Brandon K. Scott later in the show. Cody, it's no secret that the linebacker position has been struggling, right? So much so that we've been waiting and anticipating the return of rookie Christian Harris. We had been waiting and anticipating what Garrett Waller would be able to do in his sophomore year. And then a lot of people, including myself, wanted to see more of Blake Cashman due to the play and the inabilities by Christian Kirksey and Kamu Grugier-Hill and Kevin Pierre-Louis when he was out on the field. There's been a lot of issues, right? Coverage has been maybe the number one issue. Missed tackles. And there's been times where the linebackers between Kirksey and Kamu, maybe more so Kirksey, has seemed to be scared to maybe want to make a tackle. Everybody is anticipating getting Christian Harris back on the field, but one man is not going to change the bad play. Everybody on that line, in that linebacker core, at that position, has to play better. And last week or earlier this week, I mentioned how we may have to look at Miles Smith as, is he a good fit for this team? Cody, we had an opportunity to hear from Miles Smith on Thursday. Let's hear what he had to say.
Well, I think all aspects of our defense we need to get better at. It's not just the play action aspect or the run fits, I should say. I mean, defensively, I don't think there's any mystery. We're not playing good enough football, and it all starts with the linebackers. We have to play better. Play action-wise, we have to play the play action better. It's as simple as that. It's not a scheme issue. It's about just playing the plays better the way that we know how to play them. He was coming along. He was starting to get the defense, but, again, we've put in a decent amount of defense since he was off the field, since his injury. But he was picking up a defense. He's a smart kid. I think every coach that's been with him will tell you that. And he's obviously athletic. So he was coming along pretty well before he got hurt. But again, he's missed the last 2 months, so that's going to have a detrimental effect on him.
Want to bring it back. That was from Miles Smith talking about not only Christian Harris, but the play of the linebacker group. Cody, I'm happy that he addressed his position, right? It's different, not necessarily different, but it is kind of different when your head coach calls you out, or maybe, just in general, you understand that you're not doing well. But to hear it from your position coach, like Miles Smith, who I have questioned, I'm not necessarily 100% sold on him. However, I do understand this. Kamu and Kirksey were both journeymen before landing with the Houston Texans. They were never perennial Pro Bowlers. They were not guys that typically you would just game plan for. Both good athletes, both good football players. They made it to the NFL. I understand that. But it's a reason why last year they were, with the top free agent targets for the Houston Texans in a year that was a down year for free agents for the Houston Texans. They were maybe the top players brought in. And they have played bad. They have struggled. I think Kamu has done a much better job than Kirksey. Not by a lot, but he has played a little bit better. And between those two guys, you got to look at the missed tackles. The Houston Texans are one of the most missed tackle teams in the NFL. And we've seen a lot of that at the second level between the linebacker guys. There's been times where I'm seeing a player come to this zone, this area, your assignment where you're supposed to be in, but you're nowhere to be found, whether that may be Kirksey, whether that may be Kamu. That has been an issue. And the play of the linebacker, specifically between those two guys, because they have taken majority of the snaps defensively for the Houston Texans so far, the play of those guys have cost Houston big downs. There's been multiple times where a third and short is very possible, but now it may be a first down because you were not in your zone. Or we've seen teams been able to rip off big runs and make big plays because the person at the second level who's supposed to be in this area wasn't there. And so I'm happy that, coming from Miles Smith, their position coach, he addressed that. He understands that they need to be better. And I like the fact that he called, in so many ways, called them out. Hey, it's not just about it's an entire defense, but we got to be better here at our level. I appreciate that.
He could call him out all he want to. Same thing as Pep Hamilton. He did the same thing on yesterday when he started talking about the inconsistencies that the offense have. However, John, listeners and viewers, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what they do to call the players out. At the end of the day, you just have to take a look at the reality of the situation, that majority of these guys who are getting majority of the snaps, i.e. the linebacker position, i.e. Christian Kersey and Kamu Grugier-Hill, they are just not as talented as other players around the league, because at the end of the day, this is still a franchise that is still in the early stages of its rebuild, which means that they do not have the best talent to put out there on the field. And the one bright spot, because Lovie Smith always want to talk about, well, what about the positives? The one bright spot I would say about this on both sides of the ball is the fact that when you take a look at the rookie class, and maybe a little bit of the sophomore class, when you take a look at a guy like Nico Collins, the bright spot comes that at some point we are going to expect a lot of these young guys to truly take the helm from the majority of these veterans that you have out there on the team. And John, I'm really not sure what is going on between Kamu Grugier-Hill and Christian Kersey, because look, they like you mentioned, they were not Pro Bowl caliber players last year, but at the same time they were decent. And I just want to know, and I'm going to find out, what has been the primary cause of their struggles, of their regression for the 2022-2023 campaign? Because, John, it's really not making sense, because I remember going into training camp, both of those guys talk about what the defense can do moving forward, being the second year in Lovie Smith's defensive system. But here we are entering week 5 against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and both of those guys are not looking good at all.
I look at a player like Kamo, who last year was his first year ever playing in his career 80% of defensive snaps. Right, Kersey has had more experience in the league, but both of those players are on their third team, right? And I do want to apologize. Kersey was able to get a contract extension with the Cleveland Browns. Came in 2014 with Cleveland, spent 5-6 seasons with Cleveland, so that's a good thing. However, for them, I don't know. I don't want to blame it on the scheme, because the cover 2 scheme has been considered maybe the easiest in the NFL, maybe the easiest in football, where guys are just can adapt to it, and that is one of those base defenses that you typically may learn early on when you start playing football in high school. Not 100% sure. I can't put a finger on it. However, on film, on tape, what we are seeing is bad coverage. Like, guys are just easily in your area, and it's not like you're there and you're trying to make a play and a guy just beat you on a play. Like, that happens. For both of those players, there's been times where you're not there in your zone. And missed tackles, right? That's been an issue. Jalen Petrie right now leads the team with 8 missed tackles. But Houston is notoriously bad right now missing tackles. And that's coming from everybody. When you look at the linebacker guys, the one question that I have is, when they do get healthy, how interchangeable will those players become? Will Miles, will Lovey, the defensive mind that he is, will they be able to, in certain situations, maybe I want to put Wallow and Harris out with Kamu right now. Maybe I want to switch it up. And I think that's what's been hurting them a little bit. They have not had a lot of depth at the linebacker position, if we're being fair about the situation. Not a lot of guys have been able to come in and relieve those two players. There has been a lot of times where you may have wanted another player out there because of their athletic ability, or they're able to drop back in coverage. You may want that player out there, but they're not available to play right now, and so you have to go with who's on your depth chart. I think that's been an issue, but overall, they just got to get better. And I don't think there's really faith in that group right now that they will get better.
To answer your question, John, Miles Smith and Lovey Smith, I do believe that they will take an approach where they will be willing to interchange throughout that linebacking core, especially when you take into consideration what we were expecting out of Christian Harris, because I do remember doing OTAs, doing mandatory mini camps. There were moments where Christian Harris was out there running with the first team, and as you just alluded to, it's because of the injury to Harris, the injury to Wallow, hurting the depth, and you're looking at two linebackers who was going to be extremely. Yeah, Blake Cashman as well. He's going to be out Sunday with a head injury. You're looking at two now. When you take into consideration Blake Cashman, you're looking at three linebackers who is going to be extremely valuable for the Houston Texans linebacking core. And it's just unfortunate that they got hit with the injury bug a hell of a lot earlier than what anybody wanted to expect.
All right, here's a sports analogy for you. When it comes to burglars, your home is like the end zone, and you need the absolute strongest defense you can muster. That's why I use and I trust SimpliSafe Home Security. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. It's cutting-edge technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. So you always know your home is going to be safe. With the 24/7 professional monitoring, SimpliSafe agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police and first responders in an emergency. Even if you're not at home or you cannot be reached, SimpliSafe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real. They even have hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and any other threats to your home. Our monitoring experts use proprietary advanced technology, response technology to visually confirm when a break-in is real so you can get the highest priority police dispatch. So here's what you got to do. Visit simplisafe.com/lockedonnfl to learn more. You can save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for the interactive monitoring plan and get your first month FERE. It's for free. However you want to put it, it's free. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Visit simplisafe.com/lockedonnfl. As always, thank you guys for making the Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Now make sure you check out NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL. Locked On local experts give you the inside scoop of the 5 biggest games of the NFL weekend, including Sunday and Monday Night Football. Plus, betting advice from the field's leading expert, Bet Online. Follow Locked On NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.
And welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Friday installment of Locked On Texans, which means we have our brother, our friend, Mr. Brandin K. Scott from Sports Radio 610. Brandon, what's going on, my guy?
Fellas, living good, man. I'm living good. How y'all feeling about a quarter way through the season, man? About a quarter way through the season, feeling good, feeling energized.
Disappointed, depressed, already ready for the season to be over with because it doesn't make any sense.
I'm fine.
Man, hey, nah, you got to be. Y'all got to be
to my boy Drew.
Oh my gosh. So I guess we're doing this taking for a quarterback in the second half of the season or whatever.
Can I just say something really quick? Can I say something really quick? I don't think there's a quarterback team should be tanking for. I don't believe in tanking, but I don't think neither one of these top prospect quarterbacks you should actively tank for.
Well, we might have to save that conversation for another day because CJ and Bryce, I mean, if they put on the Houston Texans jersey come 2023, I would not be mad about that.
You let me know the last Ohio State quarterback that worked out in the NFL. By the way, if you go back and watch all of those, so did Justin Fields. All of those Ohio State quarterbacks Look at the amount of speed and space that the offense was giving them during their good runs.
Hey,
It don't happen in the NFL like that.
but look, John. I can remember a few years ago, folks were saying the same thing about Alabama quarterbacks until you got Tua, until you got Jalen Hurts, until you got Mac Jones. And my whole thing, like I hear what you're saying about. We agree first of all on the initial point about just not believing in tanking. I'm with you on that. I don't believe in tanking at all. But when I look at Bryce Young, I'm thinking about a quarterback who is better than all three of the ones that were right before him. I'm looking at Mac Jones, I'm looking at Tua, and I'm looking at Jalen Hurts, all as credible and viable starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And I feel like Bryce Young can at least be that, at least be what those guys are, if not better. So that's I'm not saying you should tank for him, but I definitely think that they're worth desiring if you ain't got a quarterback, which I don't think the Texans do have the quarterback in the future.
Well, really quick, and then I'm gonna give it to Cody. Miami is where? It's in Florida. Florida's a beautiful place, and they were able to make a trade. They was able to make some signs. They was able to make some good off-season decisions and moves. Philly, what they did, they was able to make a trade. They was able to make some signings. They made some off-season moves. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about Bill Belichick because it can get personal. What I'm saying is, I don't see players that would actively want to come to Houston right now.
Oh, well.
And Miami and Philly was able to have that in their back pocket. At the very least, Miami, this is Miami. The state taxes for Florida. This is Miami. This is Miami. Philly is Philly, and they was able to make a trade and bring in A.J. Brown, who has been incredible for the Philadelphia Eagles so far this year, and helping out two of those young quarterbacks who struggled because of the lack of weapons around them, and they just needed more time in the field, which a lot of people don't give out to quarterbacks nowadays because of the instant success we've seen. Those franchises did a very great job of investing into those two young quarterbacks. I don't have faith Houston will do that. I don't have faith that Houston will be able to swing big-name free agents or make those trades for big players that want to get out of their situation because of something that I've been personally attacking since 2012 when they didn't bring in Peyton Manning and they kept Matt Schaub. That's been an issue. We'll talk about that another time. What I'm saying is I don't feel like Houston will be able to do that. We're going to bank on some rookies to get it done. Tua ain't banking on no rookie to get it done. He had to bank on Tyreek Hill to help him out and help out Jalen Waddle. Same for A.J. Brown and Philly. That's my sentiments. And I don't think Bryce Young is going to fix what Houston has a problem with right now. So don't tank for him. Get better.
Well, it does seem like Clemson does a good job developing quarterbacks. Maybe this franchise might get an opportunity to draft a quarterback
That'll never happen again.
from Clemson. Who knows? I'm just saying. We see what Trevor Lawrence doing. So maybe this franchise should wish for a quarterback from Clemson.
You bite your tongue, man.
But moving forward, Brandon. Week 5 of the regular season, a lot of people are already frustrated, disappointed about how this season has went for the Houston Texans as of right now. Entering the game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, they are underdogs, surprisingly, with a record of 0-3-1, but it seems like a lot of people started to get some hope and expectations due to the return of Christian Harris. Brandon, what are your thoughts about the return of Christian Harris? And if there is a chance we could see Christian earlier than expected, how do you feel he can actually help this organization?
Well, first off, I think that the whole conversation around Christian Harris is a healthy one and a good one for a team that's in the spot that it's in right now. Like, we're at that point. Think about what you were saying earlier when we first opened. Like, you're just ready for it to be over with. It's been disappointing. Like, I imagine for Texans fans, it is already a tiring, taxing season if they're in it for the wins and losses and want to see like tangible improvement in the win column. Now, we're kind of at that stage of the season now where the tanking versus non-tanking crowd is going to collide because now we're going to have conflicting ideas on what's best for the organization. So I think
they will leave us.
Yeah, right. There will, yeah. You got to throw all of the names in there. You got Anthony Richardson, Will, Bryce Young. You got to throw them all out. You got to throw them all out there in the mix. But I think that the Christian Harris return is, like I was saying this on the radio earlier today, that as a conversation piece, it kind of saved us a little bit because at some point, all of that losing is going to get boring. It's going to get old talking about how they can't cover the middle of the field and how they can't stop the run. They don't have no form tackling. Davis Mills is inconsistent. Who do you give the ball to outside of Damian Pierce? Where the rest of your weapons at? Like, that conversation is gonna be we're gonna have less and less patience for that type of conversation week in and week out if it continues this way, and that becomes like a theme of the season, like same old problem, same old Texans every week. But Christian Harris, new blood, we ain't seen him, okay. Unlike Mario Addison, who also has a chance to come off the defensive end, Mario Addison, who also has a chance to come off the injured list and play. We at least saw him in the last preseason game. We at least have seen him play in the NFL before, a lot, because he's been in the league a long time. Christian Harris is brand new, a brand new concept. And lo and behold, what are the Texans struggling with the most, at least on the defensive side of the ball? What's the weak link of the Texans defense? I don't think it's even arguable that it's the linebacking core. I think it's been a little bit disappointing up front with the defensive line. We've talked about that a little bit on this show, especially when I've been on. I know we've talked about that, but they've gotten some sacks. They've made some plays. They didn't really do anything against Justin Herbert last week, but we've seen Jerry Hughes make plays. I've seen Rasheem Green and Jonathan Grenard make a play here and there. I know Christian Kirksey got that interception against Denver, and so that counts. You can't just pretend like it didn't happen. But, I mean, outside of that, man, this linebacking core has just been, like, not just bad, but almost missing. It's almost like they're not there. It feels like they're not on the field. You know what I mean? It feels like they got a front four and a back three. And you're like, or a back or a back.
This
four.
Man missing a whole position group.
It feels you're just like, where are they
playing 7-on-7?
Yeah, it's almost like in some cases, depending on how the play materializes, it's almost like you need the all 22 just to get all 22 dudes on the field so you can see everybody. It's like, where the linebackers at? Where are the line? Do they play with line? I thought Lovie Smith defense is the hallmark of a Lovie Smith defense, supposed to be the linebacker position. Where they at? You don't see them. So Christian Harris, you ask about we're talking about a 4-4 guy. Okay. I feel like one of the big things that the linebacking core is missing right now is that speed and athleticism, even though Kama Grugier-Hill is supposed to be kind of a speed guy, he's not good in coverage, period. He's just flat out not good in coverage, and at times gets swallowed up on the run. Like when he's going downhill or like has an angle, he's good. But
he was good.
But like in coverage and just kind of being an all-around linebacker, which is how I guess they view Christian Harris, is more so the modern all-around linebacker. You know, like what you're seeing from Devin Lloyd that you're going to see across the field from the Jacksonville Jaguars. I imagine that's how they envision him, something like that. I think it could make a tremendous impact in terms of just the competence on the defense. But more than anything, honestly, Cody, I just want to see what the kid looks like. You know, I'll take a slight disagreement respectfully with the linebacking coach, Miles Smith, Lovie's son, who I think he mentioned to the media about, you know, since their errors in the linebacking core have been primarily mental, he doesn't want to throw a rookie in there, a rookie who's never played in there, and have him, you know, risk him not being a solution because he's having the same mental errors. But to me, if the veteran dudes that you trust out there are having mental errors or can't seem to get it right mentally, what do you have to lose with throwing the rookie out there who at the very least has some physical traits and some physical attributes that could at times, not all the time, but at times maybe make up for some mental lapses or make up for when you get out schemed, you know, like the physical traits element of it, the potential of it, and the lack of production that they've gotten at that position, to me, makes it worthwhile to just throw him out there and let him get his experience. Let him figure it out by being on the field, especially given where you are in the season already. You're the only winless team. Not a lot of games, if any, of these games on this schedule that are really, truly winnable for you. I don't think. I thought the most winnable game was against Chicago. They lost it. You know, so it's like, okay, what is this season about now? What is the point? What is the goal here? And I know no team wants to admit, the players and the coaches don't want to admit that the season is about player development and talent evaluation and figuring out what you got. They want to go out there and win, compete, win in a week in and win out a week out. And I'm with that. However, you've gotten enough of a sample size to see what your linebacking core looks like. You have no tape on Christian Harris, didn't get to play in the preseason. It is time. It is time for him to see the field come hell or high water. So that's where I'm at. And I think it's going to make this huge difference to where now you insert Christian Harris and all of a sudden the defense is really good. Or all of a sudden you insert Christian Harris and the Texans are more competitive. Not necessarily, no. But to me, learning about Christian Harris is part of what this entire season is about. The same thing that you're doing with Dameon Pierce, and the same thing you're doing with Derek Stingley and Jalen Petrie in the secondary. You know, you need to Kenyon Green on the offensive line. You need to know all you can about Christian Harris by the end of the year.
100% agree. I do think that they will take it slow with him, kind of what they did with Gary Wallow. 20 snaps a year, 25 snaps there to get him acclimated to the game. I want to switch over to the offensive side of the ball, and I want to leave NRG Stadium, and I want to go to the Texan Twitter streets. And on Twitter, it was
some of my favorite streets, man. Some of my favorite streets to be out there, man.
On Twitter, it was a huge, debate, talking conversation. Shout out to Sarge, by the way, man. He knows what he does. He's so good at it in spaces. Whether or not Brandin Cooks should be traded. I'm not going to ask you that, but I do want to ask you, what do you think, or how would you classify the legacy of Brandin Cooks with that Texan jersey on?
Man, it is interesting because, and I have to go look and see where he's at, like in terms of the numbers. This is only the third season that he's with the team. He's been the best wide receiver on the team. And you're going to count this year, obviously, too. 3 years in a row, the best wide receiver on the team. I think that says something. I think that matters in terms of like the overall conversation of like, where does he fall in line of all-time Texans and things like that. But I don't feel like you can ignore that he's only been a part of failure here. Everywhere he's gone, they have won. Which is one of the more interesting parts about observing him here, and him not like raising a big fuss about wanting to leave or like being obvious. Like, some of these other guys where it's been obvious they wanted to get out.
And he embraced it, really, honestly. Mitchell, remember he said he didn't want to get traded again. He wanted to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that was more so about not just not wanting to be traded on a whim. He's at a point now, guys, where so he's a first round pick, if I'm not mistaken. First round pick, got a contract. Now has gotten another contract. So that is, first round picks get good contracts. So that is 3 solid contracts that Brandin Cooks has gotten. I say all that to say Brandin Cooks is rich, like legitimately rich now. So he don't have to do anything he doesn't want to do. You don't get to tell Brandin Cooks what to do. You don't get to say, Brandin Cooks, you're going to Carolina now. You're going to play with Baker Mayfield and be on the Panthers now. You don't get to do that. Because he can say, hell no, I'm not doing that. I'm rich. I'm not doing anything that I don't want to do. You know what I mean? Like he's at that point in his career, both as a player and like his, financial portfolio, I'd imagine. So it's an interesting question, but unfortunately, I think that everybody who was a key player on the 2020, 2021, and 2022 teams, not named Deshaun Watson, obviously being the quarterback of the 2020 team, is going to have a forgotten sort of legacy, whether they were good on this team or not, honestly, because the team was so bad and was in such shambles. Like his first season, Brandin Cooks is balling, but you got the Bill O'Brien stuff going on. Okay, it's the COVID year. It's a year that a lot of people would just like to forget in general that it ever happened. And then the next year, it's the David Culley year, and now we have where it seems like his play has at least regressed a little bit. Or at least their ability to get him the ball, whether it be a mix between Davis Mills not being consistent and the play calling not necessarily always setting him up, which I think is less of an issue than the Davis Mills thing. But yeah, man, he will be easily like the best receivers in Texans history are going to go Andre Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins. And then when you start talking about that third guy, he's gonna have to be in the conversation. They just simply will because of how good he's been and how good he is. It's just a shame that I don't think that he's gonna be around long enough to see the turnaround. You know, by the time this team gets good again, who knows if Brandin Cooks will still even be playing football, much less with the Texans. So, yeah, no, I think it's a somewhat complicated question because he will have never played on a good team, but will have always the entire time been a really good player.
Definitely got to get your prediction for Sunday coming up. However, before we do that, betonline.net is still your number one source for football betting information this season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-date scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite games and events, including MLB. Ooh, we're finna get some playoff baseball. MMA, boxing. We probably ain't gonna never get Shakur and all of these new fights they talking about. And some golf. So head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more because BetOnline is where the game starts. Thanks for making the Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Be sure to check us out on Monday as we recap the game. Hopefully, we get a victory. If not, we'll talk about the L. Now, make your second listen the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free, and it's available wherever you get your podcast. Before we get out of here, we got a game on Sunday that may or may not result in a win. Could be another L for the Houston Texans. Week 5, it'll be their 4th L because they got their tie right after that. Brandon K. Scott, the Jacksonville Jaguars have struggled in 2 games this year that they lost. Both of those games, the opposing team was able to get after Trevor Lawrence and make his day a little bit difficult. They also, against Philly, against the Commanders, I always want to call them whatever, but the back end of their defense can be exploited. And we look at Sunday's game, we saw Nico Collins with the first big catch of the year. Mm-hmm. Then Davis Mills goes out there and it connects with another big play to Brandin Cooks to score a touchdown. This game isn't out of reach for Houston. I think it's a winnable game, but your prediction, I'm not going to necessarily ask for a final score, but if you want to give it, of course, it's welcome. Do you see Houston winning this game? And is this the last hope that they have with you? Like, after this, if you don't win it, you're going defeated for the rest of the year.
Yeah, so I think that is a thing that we could say about every game that they play from here on out. Like, if y'all don't win this game, y'all ain't winning no game. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm just going to be straight up with you, John. I'm not picking them to win. I'm not saying that they're not going to win a game this year. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is right now, as I sit here in week 5 with you guys on the Locked On Texans podcast, I don't have them currently in the moment winning a game. Okay, or I'm not picking them against the opponent. Okay, now the week might come and whatever happened with the opponent's previous week might factor in and you know, doing some research on what's been going on with them. Like I reserve the right to during the week say, you know what, I got a good feeling about this week for the Texans. But from where we sit right now, I don't see it in none of the games. I do agree with your point though, John, about the Jags and the idea that you can exploit them on the back end a little bit. It's also true that they can make plays, though, not just on the back. Obviously, the strength of that defense is the front 7, and particularly their rookies, Walker and Lloyd, who I mentioned earlier in the show. Walker, obviously, the number 1 overall pick. They got back-to-back number 1 overall picks out there looking like number 1 overall picks. Must be nice. But if the Texans are going to win this game, I feel like even though the weather was a big factor for the Eagles and in that Eagles-Jaguars game last week, it was a rainy game, a wet game. Trevor Lawrence lost 4 fumbles, gave the ball up 5 times. I don't think that that's something that they can replicate necessarily. Like, they're not going to be able to just insert those conditions into this game and say that, hey, this is exactly how we're going to beat them. But I do think it's closer to the formula of how the Texans will need to win games. Really, all of any game that they win, I feel like this is going to be the formula. And same is the case here against the Jacksonville Jaguars. You need to win the turnover. And I don't want to be a cliche guy here, but not only like not lose the turnover battle. I think a lot of times you hear coaches and players talking about not losing the turnover battle or not turning the ball over. No. It ain't going to be simple enough to just push and be even in the turnover battle. You need to win the turnover takeaway battle, as in they have turned the ball over more times than you have. That's number one. And running the ball. Those are two things that the Eagles, now mind you, it's the Eagles. The Eagles are arguably the best team in the league right now, 4 games into the season. And I'm not saying that the Texans should be the Eagles or can be the Eagles, but that formula of turn Trevor Lawrence over, they did it last year. Just saw Trevor Lawrence turn the ball over last week. So that's doable. That to me is the most attainable thing. As good as Trevor Lawrence has been this year, I think the most realistic and attainable thing that they can do is turn him over and stick to their, again, here's the buzzword that I use every time I'm on here, that stated identity of being a ground and pound football team, one that likes to run the ball. I think that's what you need to do. I think that that's the formula. And you got to stick with that. Now, can their back end be had or their plays to be made? Absolutely. And they're going to have to try to make those. Like, to me, I feel like you just need fewer misses in those few critical moments when Davis Mills is really letting it rip. Because for the most part, like, go back and look at the last game, right? Just as an example, against the Chargers. You were talking about Davis Mills because that's the sexy topic, the quarterback, right? But that was mostly a Dameon Pierce game. Like, I actually like the strategy of let's feed Dameon Pierce and ask Davis Mills to make a play here or two. And I felt like that's what they did. And unfortunately, he didn't really start making them until the game was a little bit out of reach, or was they, they're not good enough to really come from behind. But I actually, controversial take, I didn't think he was terrible on Sunday. I didn't think he was like great. I didn't think he was part of the solution, but he wasn't like high on my list of problems. Davis Mills, the interception, really bad. The miss to I was gonna say Brandin Cooks. The miss to Nico Collins on 3rd and 5. I think it was a slant, maybe. Really bad. Man was wide open and jumped. You got a man that big and he's jumping, and so it clearly had to been like a miscommunication, wrong route, or whatever. It looked bad. It was awful. And then there was a sack that I thought he took, not the one on 4th down where they didn't block Khalil Mack. That was just ridiculous. Either coaching or a brain fart by whoever was supposed to block Khalil Mack. Okay, I don't know if they've heard of him. He plays football pretty well. But not that one. It was another play where the pocket is clean for a little bit, and I just want him to step up, make a throw, or step up and make a play. I'm not saying he would have been able to get the first down. It was 3rd. I feel like it was 3rd and long.
Was that that wasn't the OJ Howard one, was it?
Was it the OJ Howard one?
There was one play where he ended up getting, I think, sacked on that play, but there was one play where
I don't think it was OJ Howard.
Second, OJ was open.
Yeah. I had to go back and look and see who all was open, because it did feel like the issue was, and I didn't watch on that play. I don't think I watched the all 22. I just watched the TV copy, so I didn't see everybody. But the assumption is he's standing there because he doesn't, whether he's open or not, he doesn't see it. But what I'm asking him to do, even if he doesn't see his open guy, is to just step up and be an athlete. One of my most disappointing things with Davis Mills, guys, I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here. One of my most disappointing things with watching Davis Mills has been, you know what, guys, last year, I tried to defend him a little bit as an athlete. Like, I thought, okay, and I'm admit I'm wrong here now. I'm not doing it no more, okay? But I remember last year thinking he should be an athlete somewhere between, like, better than Matt Ryan and maybe not quite as good as Daniel Jones. Like, I'm not expecting him to be able to run all over the place. But I do expect him to move better than Matt Ryan. I said that in week 1. I need to see Davis Mills moving better than 37-year-old Matt Ryan. He did not and does not. And that, to me, has been disappointing because I didn't think he was going to be out here, running a bunch of RPOs and gashing guys. But I was expecting his pocket presence and mobility to be a lot better than what we've seen so far. So, but again, back to the point. The formula to me is go get that ball on defense. Go get that ball and feed Damian Pierce. That's how you win the game.
And I love the fact that you just finished talking about Davis Mills as a quote unquote athlete, because that is something that John has been alluding to for this entire season. Like, use your legs. And I remember Titus Howard last year even talked about, like, Davis Mills is faster than what people believe. He's sneaky athletic, but yet when he gets there in the game, I don't know if he's thinking too much. I don't know if the Texans just got like a short leash on him or he's just scared or whatever, but he's a statue. I'm like, Davis, just move. There was a moment in Sunday's game, I can't remember what part of the game, but there was a moment where he had the gap was open for him to pick up at least 7 to 8 yards. And he decided to just stand there and Davis at this point, oh my gosh.
And what's wild too, Cody, is that it's like we know he can move, or at least it feels like he should be able to move better because they roll him out.
Exactly.
They roll. I mean, he's
they give him opportunities.
You know what I mean? They roll him out, but you don't even put the rollout in your playbook if you don't think your quarterback can move at all. You know, if you think that you got just a straight up non-athlete, just all across the board at quarterback. So that part of it is frustrating. It's like, okay, we need you when the play break down, when we need some improvisation, we need you to improvise every now and then. And it doesn't feel like, I mean, he don't have no improvisation to him. None. None. The play design, you always talk about Pep Hamilton. And maybe that's an interesting point too about quarterbacks in general, is like, and when you talk about offensive coordinators, how quarterbacks who extend plays outside the pocket or make plays when the play breaks down, the play design breaks down, how they make their offensive coordinators look good or just don't make them look bad, because it don't matter what the play design was. You got an eraser. You got a guy that just went out there and made a play. And so since Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or whoever it is made a play, you done forgot what the hell the play design was. You don't even remember what the play was because you had a dude that could make a play. Here, play don't work.
No, got it.
We looking at the quarterback and the play caller like, man, what y'all doing? You know what I mean?
He ain't got it. He's not like that.
Brandin K. Scott from Sports Radio 610. Brandon, really quick, where can our listeners follow you at on social media? And please be sure to tell them about the B Block and your weekly spot on Sports Radio 610 as well.
Yeah, y'all follow me on Twitter at Brandin K. Scott. You can pretty much get all the updates there wherever I'm going to be at. But at Brandin K. Scott is the Twitter account, the B Block Podcast, wherever it is that you get your podcast weekly. And on Sports Radio 610 on Thursdays at 11 a.m. on In the Loop. You can count on it. I can guarantee it every week, 11 a.m. And I'm also going to do some, today's Friday. A week from today, I will be doing the morning show with Sean Bajani on Sports Radio 610, Football Friday morning show. So that'll be from 6 to 10 a.m. Make sure y'all check that out a week from Friday, somewhere around the time when you'll be checking out the Locked On Texans podcast too. So you can double fist that thing. You know what I mean? Whether it's before or after, you can double fist that thing. Watch check us out 6 to 10, and then have that Locked On Texans podcast ready on deck, waiting for you.
Hot the towels.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at Cody Davis _24.
We don't know how to act. Audience, listeners, viewers, we don't know how to act.
But I'm Johnson Sports Guy Hickman. Make sure you check us out on YouTube, of course. Follows, like, subscribe under the name Locked On Texans. Give me a follow on Twitter as well at John_Hickman12. We will be back as promised on Monday with a recap. And again, hopefully, we are talking about a dub. But if not, if all else fails and we talking about L's, we'll be right here on Monday with bells on our feet. Enjoy y'all weekend, man. Peace.